Okay, so I've gone through, I've applied the base colors onto this mesh, and I wanted to show you the last little prep before we start painting in Clip Studio or whichever painting software you want to use for your pipeline. And there's one thing that always comes up whenever I'm texturing. It doesn't matter what I'm doing or when I'm doing it. I always find that at some point I've forgotten something or I need to change something inside of Blender before coming back and continuing my painting. So I wanted to come through here and show you guys how you re-import your mesh into Substance Painter if you've changed it. So let's say hypothetically you've gone through and you've changed something inside of Blender. What you can do is you can overwrite your original base mesh. Wherever you put it, wherever that location was, as long as you put an FBX with the same name in that original location, then Painter will remember it. And you can go through and you can simply click re-import mesh and it'll bring it back in and do its best to update the hierarchy with the new addition you made. You may have moved some vertices, you may have added some new geometry. Painter will do its best to import it that way. And normally this tends to work. If you find that doesn't work and something broke, I recommend that you go into project configuration and you select a new mesh and just make sure to update these two settings so that they match your original project settings. If you've done that, everything should be okay and it should work. If you still find issues, try disabling this option down here. It's grayed out for me because I haven't selected a new mesh. It's possible that when you do this that it won't fix everything. It's possible that some stuff might not work still. That gives you the best shot at it working. The more final your mesh is, the better when working in Painter. So with that being said and done, I have one piece of geometry that I added, which was the kind of frill patterns here on the chest. I changed the design a little bit. I didn't want there to be too many of them. I had a third in the original concept, but I wanted to try going with two. I might add a third later. We'll see how it feels. But for me, all I need to do to get this working is go to my texture sets and I can select the clothing. And then I simply need to add that frill texture to this pattern here. And there we go. So I'm ready to go painting, right? And one thing that comes to mind is that if I was to leave this software as this looks, that I would be able to do quite a bit of painting and it would work pretty well. But there would be one particular problem that I had run into. And that particular problem is, yeah, the colors match the concept now, but some of these shapes are hard to see. It's hard to pick up some of these shapes. So what I like to do, and this is mostly from a working copy mindset, is I like to have a select layer. And this is a dynamic, basic red fill layer that I will dynamically change by editing its mask so that I know, hey, Painter or Clip Studio, this is what I want to paint on. And then above it, I'll create the opposite. The, hey, I don't want to paint on this. This is the layer of don't paint on this. And typically, if I just use the eyedropper here and select the background, it'll make stuff look invisible when I'm in the base color view because it's the same color as the background. And that tends to work quite well for me. This is also a good way to troubleshoot geometry. Like if there's holes in your mesh you can typically see, like I can see how I can see through the skirt in a few spots, and that might serve as a good way to clean up my mesh later. So we have our hide these layers material, and then we have our select material. And what I can do is if there's a specific section that I want to paint on, I can either add it in using the tools we were using earlier, or if I want, I can take another mask that I made earlier. Let's say this one, for example, and I can right-click on it and copy. This text is always so small. Let's see here, copy mask. I'm going to scroll up to my select layer, and I can right-click on the mask, and I can paste into mask with Control-Alt-V or this right-click menu. And now we'll see that we have this. Both these techniques work pretty well. Use whichever you prefer. I tend to find the less that you're bringing over into your other software, the better. But when you're doing a first pass, I commonly like to do a lot all at once. Again, make sure your camera is set to a very low field of view before beginning this next step. The lower the field of view, the more likely your work won't break. So, to start off, what I like to do when I'm beginning the initial process of painting is I like to do a capture of my screen that is just everything visible. This is kind of like making a reference guide. I use this to do a rough first pass, and I'll commonly paint over top of this as much as I can. Now, for selecting your screenshots, you can either use Screenshot, which is a plugin that I like using a lot. It's a pretty useful software that I'll link for you guys, or you can use your basic snipping tool. I like using Screenshot because with Screenshot, I can hook it up to a hotkey and simply press that hotkey, and it'll freeze my screen and let me take a picture of my viewport. I can then copy through that hotkey to a clipboard and drop that image into whatever software I need. I'll use PREF for now. What matters is that the aspect ratio of your screenshot is as close to the viewport as possible. This aspect ratio of this viewport and the aspect ratio of your screenshot should be as close as possible. And the higher resolution the monitor that you're doing this on, the better. For the course, I'm doing this on 1920 by 1080 monitor, so that's going to add a little bit of complexity, but it should work for us. You can still put this onto a canvas that is bigger as long as it maintains that aspect ratio. So try and make sure that you're being consistent with what you're using. Now, you can rotate your character and take as many screenshots as you need, but I tend to find that the more, the better. At the end of the day, what we're doing is a first pass of texturing our character, and it's going to be a very iterative process. We're not going to be doing this once. We're not going to be doing this once and then being complete afterwards. We're going to be doing multiple passes of painting, and each time we go through and paint our character, the better quality is going to look. So take your time, do big shapes at first, and slowly work your way up to more detailed components later. Sometimes it's valuable to take a picture of the full body, but I find that the resolution of the monitor is not quite high enough to be able to do this in a consistent way. So I tend to just focus on different parts of the mesh at a time and take screenshots from there. I'm going to take a few more just for an example, and then I will transition over to Clip Studio where I can show you my process for painting. Note we'll have to adjust the feet before we start rigging too. Try to avoid the temptation of clipping only a small portion of your monitor. Make sure to do the full 3D view here for maximum results. Oh, that's interesting. Well, we should fix that. Looks like there is a misalignment of the material back here. Looks like the bloomers also are having that same issue. So let's try and get those cleaned up too. It doesn't seem to like that very much. Oh, it's because the skin's above it. I see. And again, if you have any issues with the alignment of the face tool, make sure to immediately switch over to the brush tool to clean it up. Now I'll take a screenshot of the back of the legs. And then I'll take one more picture of the back of the head so that we have a nice uniform amount. You'll see that some of the geometry is clipping with the body. I'm going to want to make sure that I import different versions of my mesh later that offsets these shapes. Probably at least one that pushes the hair back so it's not colliding with the shoulder as much. But for now, I'll just take a screenshot. Let's also figure out the issue with the top of the hat, because the top of the hat has a hole in it. But I'm pretty sure this is just the material. Let's not have a hole in our hat. If you have symmetry turned on, make note of this red line. You don't want to have this red line showing up. If you switch off of this tool to another one, like a tool that doesn't use symmetry, then you can get rid of it. But I think most of these actually use symmetry, so the easiest way is probably just to turn it off and turn it back on again after. My monitor is so big, I have to look so far just to get the screen capture. There we go. So now I'm here. If I have all these images, it looks like I even took one of my OBS by accident. So let's retake that one. That was the one at the back of the legs. So I'll just pull that back up here. So I'm going to take these 6 drawings over to Clip Studio. And the easiest way to do that is simply to first open it up. So I want to wait for it to open here. This will take a minute. There we go. And then you can go File, New, create a new canvas, and then you want to copy your image into the software. I'm just doing copy and paste. Now, like I said earlier, we want to be editing this directly, but that doesn't mean you can't scale it up, as long as you scale it uniformly. So I'm going to hold Shift and drag this until it gets to the end of the canvas. And then I'm going to Control left click the layer so that it creates a selection with the layer selected. And then I'll crop with this button right here so that it's the same size as that image. Then, with that completed, I can copy my other screenshots into the view. Like so. And then I will scale up the entire group to match the original size. And again, this should be pretty close to perfect. If you're a pixel or two off, it's okay, but it shouldn't be much more than that at all. The last thing I want to do before I continue is to take the background and get rid of it. We don't want there to be a background. If we're projecting, we want the background to look like this. We want it to be a transparent background. That will help with the projection so that we don't get any background colors applied. To do that, we first need to get rid of this UI in the top right. So I'm going to do a quick marquee selection. And then from each of these layers, I'm going to delete this UI. hopefully not deleting any of the character as well. The hands are okay. I'll be doing the hands in a different pass entirely. And then from there, you want to use the magic wand tool to get rid of the background. I like to set the tolerance pretty low for this. I can just select the background and hit delete. This is why the resolution of your monitor is so important. If you don't have a high-res monitor and you take a screenshot, you're going to notice that there's this feathering along the sides. That's not a big issue, but it's a little bit annoying because when you have this feathering, and let's delete this section here too. When you have this feathering, you have to go through and manually paint so that the background is either removed or a solid color like this. If you turn on lock transparent pixels, then you can simply color swap or eyedropper and then paint the new color on top. It's a little bit of extra work you have to do to cleaning up each layer, so I'm not the biggest fan of doing this. But when you have a lower resolution monitor, you kind of need to. You can't get a crisp enough screenshot that it would be perfect. You could also take some extra time to refine your magic wand selection by having a higher tolerance. So it's really whatever you think is going to be faster to make the selection accurate. Likewise, I talked about clipping and z-fighting. You'll notice that if you take a really zoomed out picture, any geometry that's really close together will be clipped as well. So your options to solve that are to take a closer screenshot or to be willing to edit the material selection here inside of your painting software to match. And this might lead to some inaccuracy in your painting, so consider which is best for you. For something like this, it's just a straight path.